What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WrestleRant, where every single week I, Graham G. Matthews, break down all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network as well as on the Global Wrestling Network, which is where today's show comes from, TNA No Surrender 2005. This was right around the time that TNA really started to hit their stride. Some of the early pay-per-views I talked about here on WrestleRant dating back to late last year, starting with their first few 2004, 2005 shows, were not that good. They featured a lot of bad main events, largely with Jeff Jarrett in the main event as the NWA World Champion, but as we slowly started to move away from that, the pay-per-views got a lot better. What a coincidence. But yeah, this TNA show coming off of Slammiversary the month prior was really, really good. Slammiversary I talked about a few weeks ago here on the show. I thought that was a great TNA pay-per-view from what I had seen up to that point, the Global Wrestling Network. This pay-per-view really maintained and furthered that momentum with a number of really, really good matches, especially towards the top of the card. This was another really fun pay-per-view from TNA. We kicked off the show with America's Most Wanted taking on Alex Shelley and Matt Bentley in tag team action. Nothing on the line here, just kind of a standard tag team affair. It was a really good opener. Again, nothing at stake, didn't really feel all that important. And the few moments were kind of like weird or felt off, maybe just because of lack of, I don't want to say chemistry because it was a really good match. Just a few kind of missed spots and whatnot. But overall, it was a really fun match. Kicked out the show on a high note. America's Most Wanted going over, as they should have, given they were the more established, regular tandem between the two. After that, we had a qualifier for the 2005 TNA Super X Cup tournament. This was a standard four-way between Elix Skipper, Mikey Batch, Shark Boy, and Sanjay Dutt. Dutt did go over. This was really not that good of a match. Kind of just felt random. A lot of spots just, again, felt like off and felt awkward and just not good. So overall, this really was not that good of a match. The right person did go over, though. Fun fact for you, I met Mikey Batts about 10 years ago. He had to have been maybe the second wrestler I've ever met. The first one being Tommy Dreamer almost exactly 10 years ago, which is fucking crazy to think about in retrospect. But yeah, Mikey Batts played on my dad's local softball team. He was involved in a local softball league about 9-10 years ago. And my dad had told him we went to a wrestling show the night before, a Northeast wrestling show, which is where we met Jerry Lawler. So I had gone to that show, and we told the guy about it. And he's like, oh, yeah, I used to be a wrestler. I guess he's retired now. But yeah, Mikey Batts, I met him on my father's fucking softball team, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, so I met Mikey Batts. But yeah, this was really not that good of a match. I don't know what that really had to do with anything, but I just wanted to mention that. Apollo and Sonny Sakai taking on David Young and Simon Diamond. Nothing special here. Thankfully kept on the shorter side, a lot like the previous match. So at least in cases like this where the match really was not that good at all, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything special, really not above average in any shape, form, or fashion. But it was fine. Sakai and Apollo went over, so at least they kept it short on the bright side. Samoa Joe, who quickly became a highlight on these TNA pay-per-views, taking on Chris Sabin here after debuting at Slammiversary the month before. This was an excellent match. Now, the only real nitpick I could see people having with this was that, oh, Joe just debuted, why is Sabin getting so much offense over him? But, I don't know, I really thought it made for a great match. It didn't damage Joe at all to think that he's going, toe-to-toe with a former X Division champion, one of the biggest stars in TNA's history in Chris Sabin. The guy's great, and they had an awesome match here. Sabin really took the fight to Joe. I thought they had an awesome dynamic, too, with Sabin being the smaller of the two and kind of coming close to toppling the beast at a few different occasions, only to fall short. This was a really, really fun match, and they just beat the living shit out of each other here, and obviously Joe went over as he should have. This was tremendous, and like I said, Joe really became a highlight to watch on these TNA pay-per-views. I believe the big three-way with him, Styles, and Daniels is coming up. Maybe not on the next show, maybe in the September pay-per-view. Not Hard Justice. That's the August pay-per-view. Whatever not No Surrender. It was like one of those random TNA pay-per-views because they moved the schedule around a few times. But yeah, that three-way for the X Division Championship, I'm pretty sure it's coming up on one of these on one of these pay-per-views, and I cannot wait to review that. Anyway, we had another tag team match on the show, this time 6-man tag team action with, let's see here, Team Canada consisting of A1, Bobby Roode, and Eric Young, taking on Lance Hoyt and the Naturals. Again, this was fine. Went a little too long for my taste, at almost 15 minutes long. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't a bad match. But for a match that long, you would think it would be better or more memorable. It really wasn't. But at least the right trio went over here in Team Canada. They were firing in all cylinders. They really had a formula down pat by this point for tag team matches, six-man tag team matches. They were one of the most, consistent stables in TNA history when it came to having great matches, both in tag team action, six-man action, and X Division action. These guys were always delivering no matter what. So the right outcome to an otherwise average match. Another tag team match here, this one being a street fight with the 3 Live Crew taking on Monty Brown and Kip James. James and Brown did go over here. This kind of sucked. This really was no good at all. The heels did go over, Kip James and Monty Brown. They teased something afterwards with Kip James, the former outlaw, or otherwise known as Billy Gunn. They changed his name to Kip James on the show. For what reason, I don't know. Kip James is a really bad name. Maybe because they were teasing that him and Brian James, Road Dogg, were brothers. I don't really know. But they did do something with those two afterwards, which was more noteworthy and memorable than the match itself, which was memorable, I guess, but for the wrong reasons, because this kind of sucked. The heels did go over, and it was over in 5 minutes, thankfully. Now we get to the really, really good stuff on the show, starting with AJ Styles and Sean Waltman going at it, with Jerry Lynn as the special guest referee. This was an excellent match, as you can only expect from someone the level of AJ Styles, and then Waltman going in there and having a great performance as well. I mean, the guy was not... he wasn't all there at certain points during his TNA career, Sean Waltman, that is. He was kind of going in and out with, kind of missing shows and being just kind of a no-show and stuff like that. But he was on his game in this match. And having Jerry Lynn in there also kind of helped as well. There was some overbooking and, stuff like that and teasing stuff with Lynn as the referee. But overall, this was a really fun match. AJ goes over. I fucking love this. For the X Division Championship, we had Christopher Daniels defending against P.D. Williams. And a lot like Team Canada and Samoa Joe, Daniels was one of the staples of these TNA pay-per-views when it came to the X Division Championship matches. No one was delivering better matches on these shows, unlike, other than AJ and Team Canada, more so AJ and Joe. And then Christopher Daniels, the guy kept on going in there and having great performances, this being no different. This was a really, really, really fun match, maybe one of the best matches in the entire show, aside from Joe and Sabin. They went in there, had a great match for 16, 17 minutes, really gave it their all, just going back and forth. The commentators, the crowd was into it, everyone was into it. This is just a white-hot match with Daniels going over, successfully retaining his title. I love this. Daniels rolls on as X Division champion. Then we get to the main event, which should have been a disaster, but was really a lot better than I thought it would be, to be quite honest with you. A dog collar match for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Now, Raven had won the title at Slammiversary the month before. His first feud for the belt was with Abyss. And Abyss's matches can be really hit or miss. The guy can be counted on for some great hardcore matches and other hardcore matches that aren't so good. This, I thought, was very good. It was a lot of fun. They made the most of the stipulation, which otherwise should have been a fucking trash throwaway match. Just looking at a dog collar match on paper, I don't care who's involved. That sounds like hot-ass garbage. It sounds like typical TNA, but they made it work. It was entertaining. They had 20 minutes to go out there and have a great match, and I thought they did. It was really, really good. And moreover than anything else, it was, like I said, a good first feud for Raven, because it established him as a fighting champion, a champion that can win on his own, that he can survive all this onslaught and still come out on top as champion. Abyss had been there for years, and it had been built up as this unstoppable force. So for Raven to beat him really meant a lot, and really kind of solidified him as a credible world champion. So I thought it was a really, really good match, especially down the stretch. I liked it a lot. Closed out the show on a high note. Of course, you can't have a TNA pay-per-view without Jeff Jarrett. So fucking Jeff Jarrett comes out to close out the show, seemingly indicating that we're getting a Raven and Jarrett feud over the NWA World Championship, only for Rhino to debut and spear Raven out of his boots. Maybe not literally, but he might as well have been, because that spear looked great. Rhino showed up here. It was a big moment. The crowd went nuts. The commentators went nuts. It was a good appearance for Rhino, and kicking off Rhino and Raven seemingly for the NWA World Championship. So I thought this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this match and thought it was a great close to the show. So overall, 2 thumbs up. Not every match was a barn burner, of course, but there really wasn't any bad matches aside from the street fight. The street fight kind of sucked, but everything else was either okay, good, great, or awesome. So overall, I give the show 2 thumbs up, if not 1 thumb and 3/4 of a thumbs up. I enjoyed it a lot. So check out No Surrender 2005 on TNA Impact's Global Wrestling Network. I think the next show of TNA is as hard just as 2005, if I'm not mistaken. I might have already talked about it. I have no clue. Whatever pay-per-view they had in August of 2005 is the next show I will be talking about here on WrestleRant in the next month or so. As of right now, I still have no clue what I'll be talking about next week here in the show. It was supposed to be TLC 2017, but I made that schedule like a year ago, and TLC was still in the month of October. And of course, we have Evolution coming up. There's no previous Evolution pay-per-view to review, so there's no pay-per-view I can kind of break down here on the show that has to do with like last year's October pay-per-view. So TLC 2017 will be reviewed, but probably not until December, when I think we get TLC 2018. But in the meantime, though, it'll likely be some WCW show. I think maybe Wrestle War, I think is what I had on the schedule for the week after TLC, which in my original lineup. So stay tuned for that right here on WrestleRant next week. But in the meantime, in between time, folks, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Have a great rest of your weekend, folks. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.